Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you're a medical student, a resident, or an attending, you already know that sharpening your clinical reasoning, it's pretty much a lifelong journey. Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating tool called Dojo. It's a diagnostic reasoning trainer built entirely around the idea of pushing your limits, safely but rigorously. I am super excited to show you exactly how this works, the methodology behind it, and how it literally adapts to wherever you are in your medical training. But first, think about this. How do you actually practice a high-stakes diagnosis before you're standing in front of a real breathing patient? Traditionally, we've relied on textbooks, lectures, and, reading past case reports. But let's be totally honest here. Those methods are incredibly passive. When you're just reading how somebody else solved a medical mystery, you aren't feeling that pressure to make the call yourself, right? You're not the one sorting through all the clinical noise. And that specific flaw in passive education is exactly what we're tackling today. All right, let's jump into Section 1. Welcome to Dojo, the deliberate practice approach. This brings us to a really crucial contrast. Look, when you read a case report, it is so easy to fall into the answer fishing trap. You know what I mean? You scroll straight to the bottom to see the final diagnosis, and you nod along like, oh yeah, I totally knew it was that all along. But deliberate practice? That forces active reasoning. It makes you put a stake in the ground way before you have all the answers. The whole dojo metaphor here is super intentional. It's a place to sweat the details, spar with tough scenarios, and get your reflexes sharp for when the real challenges walk through the door. The core philosophy is simple. The goal is to build your reasoning, not to read a case report. And hey, let's be absolutely clear right up front, this tool is strictly for educational use. Every single case you see in Dojo is completely fictional, it's generated on demand, so it is emphatically not a diagnostic tool for actual patient care. Think of it more like a sparring partner for your brain. So how do you actually get started? Well, the architecture is wonderfully simple. It runs entirely right in your web browser. First, you just choose the AI model you want to power your cases, whether that's Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, or even a custom API endpoint. Second, you bring your own API key. And third, and this is a big one for privacy, you keep it secure. Your key stays locally in your browser and only talks to the provider you chose. No clunky software to install. It's just a clean, fast interface to get you straight into the medicine. Moving on to Section 2, customizing your training level or setting your baseline. Okay, let's dive into this. The tool basically asks you straight up, where are you in your training? Because your answer sets the baseline difficulty for the AI case generator. It tells the system how straightforward or how incredibly convoluted the patient presentation should be. And remember, these cases are generated on demand, so they are calibrated for exactly where you are in this very moment. It maps the progression of medical expertise perfectly. Say you set your level to preclinical student. The cases will give you classic, single-system, textbook presentations. It's all about nailing the fundamentals. Step it up to intern or PGY1, and now you're seeing common presentations, straightforward workups, maybe one or two distractors tossed in just to keep you honest. Go up to junior resident, and the complexity takes a jump. Now you've got atypical features and actively competing diagnoses. By the time you hit senior resident, you're wading through patient comorbidities and making really tough judgment calls. And finally, the boss level, attending or fellow. Here, the system throws high-stakes, rare, or multi-system mysteries at you, totally packed with subtle red herrings designed specifically to trip you up. The scaling is just spot on. Now, beyond your experience level, you can also pick your specialty focus. You can drill down into fields like cardiology, ER, neurology, toxicology, you name it. But I gotta say, the most highly recommended setting is the broad rotation. And here is why that matters so much. When you select broad rotation, the trainer takes control of the pacing. It deliberately scatters cases across different specialties, so you don't get stuck in a rut, expecting every patient to have a heart problem. Better yet, it periodically forces a critical can't-miss diagnosis on you, no matter what you think you're studying. It keeps you on your toes, basically mimicking the sheer unpredictability of a real hospital door opening. To make sure your training never goes stale, Dojo also lets you control case variety. If you set it to strict, the system will literally never repeat a diagnosis from your last 10 cases. Normal keeps you from seeing your last 5. Or you can just turn it off and get a totally random roll of the dice every time. This ensures you're actually expanding your knowledge base, instead of just pattern matching the same 3 diseases over and over. All right, Section 3, Mastering Socratic Rounds. This is the ultimate diagnostic battle. Okay, so what are Socratic rounds? It's a training method where the actual diagnosis is completely withheld from you until you commit to a differential diagnosis. Talk about the ultimate antidote to answer phishing. The system flat out refuses to hand you the answer. There is no reveal button to bail you out. You have to engage, you have to synthesize the data, formulate a differential, and lock it in. Only then will the dialogue move forward. So, a standard session flows chronologically like this. First, you review the patient's story, the narrative of what brought them in. Next, you analyze the structured notes, which look just like standard medical chart data. And third, you hit Begin Socratic Rounds. Boom. That initiates a chat interface where the AI basically turns into your most intimidating Socratic professor. It grills you on your reasoning, asks what labs you want, and forces you to justify your clinical pathway before giving up the final answer. Let's move to Section 4, Tracking Your Progress and Building Your Coverage Map. After the Socratic rounds wrap up and you finally discuss the true diagnosis, you get to grade your own performance. You get 3 choices: nailed it, partially, needed hints, or missed it. And hey, this isn't just about your ego. This self-assessment actually drives your future case selection. The system logs your victories and defeats and uses that data to build your personal coverage map. It makes sure the AI targets the areas where you stumbled, while occasionally throwing in a review to reinforce what you've already mastered. The session wrap-up is just beautifully streamlined. Once you grade yourself, you log the case to your coverage map. If it was a really wild or tricky case, you can actually download a text file of the whole scenario for your own notes. And then you just hit Reset Run to wipe the slate clean and generate a brand new challenge. It's an incredibly efficient workflow, designed to keep you focused on absolutely nothing but the medicine. Which brings us to our final thought for today. Passive reading is only going to take you so far. Real mastery? That requires deliberate, active practice, where the answers are hidden and your judgment is truly put to the test. So, the question is, are you ready to step into the dojo, face the unknown, and commit to your differential? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Now get out there and keep honing that clinical reasoning.